Welcome. We are live to tape with another version of our Four Questions Journalist Spotlight. And today we are talking with John Ruch from the Reporter newspapers. Good afternoon, John. How are you?
Pretty good. How you doing, Mitch?
I'm good. Well, let's dive right in. So I think folks probably have seen the Reporter newspapers all over certain parts of North Atlanta, but give us kind of an overview. It's like, what is the Reporter newspaper group? What do you cover? How do you cover it? A little bit of that.
Yeah, so the Reporters are four community newspapers. We're based in Sandy Springs, which we cover, and we also have papers in Dunwoody, Brookhaven, and Buckhead. And we do community news, hyper-local, what's going on in your community, whatever that may be, city government, arts and entertainment, interesting folks doing interesting things, and increasingly crazy historic level stories too from time to time, like pandemics and protests and presidential elections. We also have a couple of sister publications that people may know. Atlanta in Town, which is an arts and entertainment focused publication that, as the name suggests, covers in town. And we have Atlanta Senior Life, which covers active seniors and their lives in basically the entire metro area.
Okay. Yeah, we talked to Colin a couple weeks ago with Atlanta in Town, so we got a little insight into that. But so obviously, hyper local, and even with the metro-wide stories, I imagine you try to put that local angle to Dunwoody and Sandy Springs and Buckhead and Brookhaven when you're writing the stories, if at all possible.
Absolutely. That is the lens we look through, and that's where we love to hear stories about. If it's involved someone, something, anything that is in one of our communities, we're probably interested. If not, probably not. And again, it's been a funny year for this, though. We've got this unbelievable presidential election, Republican civil war over the Georgia election results, international attention. This guy named Gabe Sterling is suddenly all over international news. He's winning fans. He's drawing enemies. The president's mad at him. And I'm like, hey, he's a Sandy Springs City Council member.
Right.
We all know and love. So we write about it from that angle.
Yeah, he's doing a great job. I got to give him credit for handling all this and being very outspoken and upfront about what's happening and what's not happening. That's pretty impressive. I was not as familiar with him up until recently, but I have seen him a lot lately. So how long have you been with the papers?
I've been with the papers a little over 5 years now. Okay. And before that, I got my start many years ago, back when alternative newspapers were still a thing. I got my start at one of those in Ohio. I worked at and eventually was editor of a couple of community papers up in Boston for many years. And it got too expensive and a little too cold up there.
Yeah.
And down to the warm Sunbelt I came, and so far so good.
So did the job bring you here, or did you come here and then find the job?
Came here and then found the job. It was kind of a roll of the dice, but it's an incredible media town. I don't need to tell you, CNN on down. So yeah, it worked out pretty well and pretty quickly.
So you mentioned kind of what you cover, and I think it's worth kind of reminding folks what you don't cover, just to save everyone a little bit of time. I imagine you get a lot of very general story pitches that people think, well, you should cover this because people in your area would be interested.
Sure. And the funny thing is, we will cover just about anything as long as it really is hyper local to us. So that's the trick. We are a general interest newspaper, so it sometimes blows my mind what we end up covering. I mean, like I say, a presidential election, this guy who's suddenly internationally famous, well, he happens to be local. We know him. So that's a way in. But yeah, in general, we're looking for things that are happening here in our communities. We get a lot of, especially from out of town, Atlanta, hey, it's something happening.
Right.
Atlanta, and even their idea of Atlanta turns out to be,
Hey,
Savannah
this
or
is
something. So
Gainesville. Gainesville is right near Brookhaven, right? Isn't it? I mean, on the map, it looks really close. So
yeah, it's down
yeah,
there somewhere south of Virginia. So
yeah,
yeah,
it's
close
it's
enough.
all kind of the same area. Gainesville, Brookhaven, East Point. Right. That's all right there.
The funny
Uh,
thing, when I was in one of the papers I worked for up in Boston, we covered a neighborhood called Jamaica Plain, and which has an interesting etymology, or nobody's really sure what it means. But we would get news pitches for Jamaica about once a month. So I'm like, boy, if I could work out somehow a trip to the islands to do some local coverage, that would be awesome. But I never pulled it off.
yeah, we're Jamaica. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That's the
sure.
ticket.
Why not?
Yeah. So you guys are. Let's talk about kind of frequency and digital versus print. So you guys
Mhm.
kind of lay that out for us.
So we have daily online news in all of our communities. That's 24/7 basically, and then we are in print with each paper monthly, and
Okay.
that is mailed into homes as well as distributed at local stores and restaurants and so forth. Though of course that's become a little strange and challenging in the pandemic time,
Right.
but we'll be getting back to a more normal distribution that way in the new year, I'm sure.
Are there so you're able to cover kind of the the larger stories in the monthly edition, and then the kind of breaking stories that fall in between you can use in the digital edition.
Yeah, that's one of the basic rhythms of what we do. Yeah, in the monthly print, you kind of wrap up some of the big picture stories, tie them together, analyze them a little bit more,
Right.
and then we often have some investigative piece, or feature piece that is special for the print edition as
Okay.
well.
So are there obviously the election and COVID are the big stories for now. Are there some other stories that are kind of in the back of your head that you want to get to when situations allow?
Well, I mean, there's you know, I instantly just think of all the pieces of the paper that went away for everybody, and it's heartbreaking. I mean, there's all of a sudden no art section at all. I mean, it's just bizarre. I am very much looking forward to writing about how artists and art organizations are coming back and doing more. I'm very much looking forward to that, and there's going to be some powerful stories there, I'm sure, as well as just some fun stories. But that has been just a bizarre vacuum to have in life. And of course, it's crept back a little bit virtually, but it's not what it should be. And then, I mean, there's parts that we're just bracing for that we know are coming. Once we're past the Senate election, it's going to be city elections in Atlanta and Sandy Springs.
Right.
There's going to be redistricting battles following the census results. So there's some really pretty big scale stories that will be coming down the pike.
Yeah, well, it's becoming clear what the General Assembly discussion is going to be about.
Yeah,
But election reform.
right.
And don't get me started on that one. that'd be a
Happy to leave that one to you.
that'd be a whole nother conversation. So talk to me about so let's talk about you a little bit, kind of the fun stuff. So what are some things that folks probably maybe don't know about John, and kind of what's cool about John, or kind of a fun hobby, or things you collect, or something kind of cool about you that would be kind of fun to share.
Yeah, I guess I think of weird more than I think of cool. My main hobby, again, when I still had more free time before an apocalypse happened, was writing about fictional apocalypses. I write fantasy novels in my spare time. So I have a series called Arrow Mask that you can go find online or on Amazon. Ironically, it did involve an apocalypse, though a much more fun and less lethal one than this, involving a monster made out of living glitter that was heating up the world. So
Yeah. Okay. All right.
yeah,
I will definitely have to. I'll dig that up. One of the things that we can do here is I can add in some video and pictures and graphics, so I can if I can find. If you want to send me a screenshot or something of some of the covers or something, I'll drop that in there too with a
sure.
link to where to go buy a copy. Right.
So I'm sure people are just dying to do immediately. All their
Well,
Christmas shopping is done now. All their holidays
I think
gifts
they
are
just don't realize that this is the stocking stuffer that they were looking for. And
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. All right. So you talk about the last book you wrote. What's the last book you've read that you want to talk about? Kind of
I'm
something
so
fun.
glad you asked, Mitch. I have a copy of it right here.
Just how it happened.
Just coincidentally, it's just laying right here next to me. So it's
First
called
one.
The
Okay.
Fossil Hunters. It's by Adrienne Mayer. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. This book blew me away. Instant, one of my instant all-time favorite books. It is about how people in ancient cultures, Greece, Rome, China, kind of what they made of fossils when they dug them up, and how they interpreted them, and how that influenced mythological monsters and gods, and how they tried to rebuild them and reassemble them inside temples and so forth. And aside from just being, that's just interesting to me. It is really insightful about, as a storyteller, about how we tell ourselves stories about weird things that come along. And, of course, today we also reassemble dinosaur bones into what we think makes some sense according to our own knowledge. And, and it's interesting to think about how that has changed even in my lifetime. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in the New York City area and went to the Natural History Museum a lot. And
me too.
I remember how they assembled the bones when I was a kid. And now when you go, they're assembled very differently. I think they have a better assessment of how they stood and walked and acted. So there's the setup is different, and it's interesting to kind of see that.
And
All
now they're
right.
putting feathers on them. So it's all
Right,
all going
right.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so favorite Atlanta restaurant?
The Highlander in Midtown, bar
Oh,
slash
yeah, yeah.
restaurant.
Oh my God, I haven't been there in a long time. Is that still I guess it's not a smoky joint like it used to be, huh?
Nothing smoky anymore, but they got a big patio, and that's how they're making it in the pandemic.
I used to play pool at a place above the Highlander. I don't even know if it's still there.
I forget what it's called now. The Independent, I think, or so. They still got pool tables.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. It was one of the you come home and smell of beer and cigarette smoke, and yeah, that was that. All right. Favorite guilty pleasure?
I don't feel guilty about any of my pleasures. I guess on the less advisable ones, maybe what has now become the weekly key lime cheesecake from the Landmark Diner down in Buckhead.
Okay.
Probably be there again Sunday, truth be told.
I have been tasked with made the mistake of baking a cheesecake on one of my last scout campouts, and now now they're like, we're camping this weekend, and like, you're gonna make that cheesecake again, right? I was like, I wasn't going to, because it does take a bit of prep at home in advance, but okay.
That's ambitious, and yeah, I can see that genie is out of the bottle.
Yeah, that's the problem
The
sometimes.
genie is out of the cake.
All right, so local getaway. Where do you some place locally where you like to go?
Not that much of a getaway person, but I did this year. I finally made it to Arabia Mountain for the first time, and I actually had a great time. That is a weird landscape and just intriguing and fun to hike around on. So
Yeah, we were biking there about 2 weeks ago. We had never been. I've been to Panola, but I hadn't been to Arabia before. I mean, they're kind of similar in terms of the setting to some extent, but I mean, great bike paths. I mean, we biked for
great biking around.
we went about 10 miles in and back, and till it started looking like it was going to rain, and we thought we should turn around. All right, so favorite non-work hobby?
I like role-playing games, Dungeons and Dragons, stuff like that. Again, a little harder in a real life apocalypse. So video gaming is getting some of those Joneses taken care of.
Yeah.
So I've been doing Assassin's Creed. I've been raiding monasteries and assassinating people as a Viking in historic England. Good wholesome fun.
I think my younger son plays that one a little bit. Is that on Steam?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. He's been trying to get me to learn some games, and I have not had quite enough time yet. But he'll be back from college next week, so maybe he can school me on a couple of things. So
I'm sure
we shall see. Yeah, I know. It's like I'm in the office all day anyway, and sometimes I don't want to come back down to the office to game again. Once it's like
it's the weird thing about this era, right? It's like everything's blurring together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, is there anything about the papers that we haven't talked about that we should mention? We talked about kind of generally what they're all about and frequency and story topics and all that. Anything special that we haven't talked about?
We have launched a new, what we hope will be an ongoing project with Maggie Lee, a reporter I'm sure you know as well.
Yep. Yeah.
A great Atlanta reporter. She does data journalism, kind of digging through troves of data like election results and turning it into a map or a graph or something more comprehensible for folks. So that's what we had her do. And our latest issue was look at the presidential election results here in our communities, precinct by precinct, on a very granular level. Really interesting to see how blue they got up here in traditionally Republican cities. So we're still thinking up fun ideas to do something like that about once a month. So
Maggie's awesome. Yeah, she's a great journalist.
Well,
great. Well, we are at our time, so I appreciate it. We've been talking all about the reporter papers, and this has been another edition of our 4 Questions Journalist Spotlight. And look for us in another week or two. I might take a week or so off for the holidays if I can grab a couple of days off. But we'll be back soon with another edition of this fun Journalist Spotlight. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you so much, Mitch.